The doctor turning into a woman and a more sanctimonious approach to social justice were concurrent and widely seen as linked. These are separate issues, both important and addressed in the two parts. The first part is about the 13th Doctor, the sex change, the relationship with the fans. The second will deal more with the social justice issues taken up. The Doctor as a white male made sense. The powerful Time Lord adventurer across space and time, destroyer of worlds, oncoming storm, the lonely god. The Doctor redefined masculinity in an intriguing way. The show witnessed the ongoing journey of the choices of a hyper privileged alien man to find better ways of using his power than violence. He didn't always succeed, but failures are a matter of regret. Hubris leading to the Doctor's downfall is a recurring theme. When he went wrong, companions served as his conscience. If the Doctor was the star of the show, companions were the soul. Women had never been written as shy of asserting themselves. Not only was he a role model for men, he was a reminder to the vulnerable to expect better than dominant, aggressive men. He also provided an even rarer role model of doing the right thing as an ongoing effort rather than an inherent quality of a hero. No one is always right or wrong. This kind of characterization works because of the Doctor's privilege. He is capable of immense destruction and cruelty, which is what makes the choice of kindness so dramatic. A person who faces discrimination is rarely able to impose terms on the world, so not choosing to do it does not have the same significance. A woman not punching and dominating her way to solutions is everyday. The character would have to be drastically rewritten and in a sensitive way. It would essentially be a new character with the same name, and the show would become a spin off with the same name. Was it necessary? I don't think so. Women in Doctor Who were never the woman in, say, the James Bond world. James Bond is a male fantasy. The audience sees the woman through the eyes of a man. The audience of Doctor Who sees the Doctor through the eyes of companions, a predominantly strong and feminine perspective, regardless of the gender or orientation of the viewer. The result is this rare phenomenon of almost all viewers either not being fans of romance or being in love with the Doctor through a woman's eyes. There is next to no sexualization of companions because, regardless of gender or orientation, we are them. This is the opposite of the white male gaze. The new gurus of gender activism actually reverse this by making the Doctor a woman and viewing her through two men who also have a strong relationship with each other and are often less than impressed with her. It isn't sexism to interpret the Doctor as male. The audience was in an emotional relationship with him, loving him, imitating him, being inspired by him. The man they loved turned into a woman who refuses to explain or care how they feel about it. Timeless children retroactively altering the sex of every single previous Doctor from male to fluid, including the four male doctors who loved women. This is a sort of thing you reveal before a romance. It was too late for this character to pull this stunt. It erased the very fundamentals of the character in other ways as well. The Doctor is no longer a Time Lord, but a timeless child. She's not from Gallifrey, but another universe. She is no longer a supremely powerful being, but a survivor of exploitation and abuse. Let alone understanding the flow of time, she doesn't even know her own past. Basically, they killed the original Doctor and replaced him with a different character with the same name and expected viewers to love her the same. This is savage. Ratings drop is the disillusioned ex setting the home on fire as she leaves. Except criticizing, ranting, or leaving horrible reviews isn't illegal. Others didn't acknowledge the Doctor as a man to begin with. No matter how much he self identified as a man in a box, they assigned him as alien and genderless and were fine with this exchange. Still, others didn't care about the continuity as long as they were entertained. There's a small number of people who interpreted it to mean representation of trans people. and they were happy about that, even though it didn't work for the story. Unfortunately, these aren't numerous enough for the show's survival. Vast majority of fans are less than happy about where the show is right now. The point of breaking glass ceilings is to ascend above them, not to stand there and get showered by broken glass. Crafting an admirable female character would have been much better than a grand gesture that appropriates a male role but still doesn't adapt the character to suit her. It is like a giant diamond to prove love, regardless of whether it is sensitive or appropriate. I don't merely mean casting a woman and appropriating a male role that evolved over half a century with the portrayal of 13 men, but exploiting the lead character for purposes not relevant to the show. Nobody knows what was achieved for the story by the doctor being a woman. Criticizing this is not sexism, it's storytelling necessity. The Fugitive Doctor's much criticized story wrecks the mythology of the show, but her portrayal was well received. If the fans were sexist or racist, they would hate her. Major change cannot be arbitrary. You can make it a mystery to delay an explanation, but it cannot be an elephant on the set to shoot around indefinitely. Jodie, an experienced actress and a woman who got the doctor's role ostensibly to represent women, didn't see the doctor as a woman herself. Her interpretation is that of a genderless alien with a childlike curiosity. That is what it took to play the doctor as a woman, stripping herself and the role of gender and infantilizing the character. So you have the story of a woman pretending to not be a woman and struggling for authority in a male role, but never owning it enough to fit a profoundly boring and somewhat ridiculous. No, seriously, show me a single person 13 is happier to see than the Kablam man. While you're at it, show me the woman whose idea of an escapist fantasy teen is a family. Literally the setting with the least autonomy for women, most duties. And I think every woman's fantasy would be to escape that setting, not to find it. But it makes sense for a child. Once you've infantilized the doctor, yes, she needs a family of adults around her. This is getting. This is what women are like. Perhaps we shouldn't advertise it for our own dignity. Sci-fi show with fictional characters, not the House of Commons. We don't relate to representatives of us in a story. We relate to characters whose stories we identify with. Of representation in Yaz. Yaz is a Muslim character. She has no Muslim habits or beliefs, and the actress Mandeep Gill, who plays Yaz, is Sikh, not Muslim. If simply sticking a label on a character without the person being, looking, or acting that identity is representation, what's wrong with casting a white male doctor and calling whatever the need of the moment is? Many say Jodie got terrible scripts, but much of the failure is a lack of character development. It isn't the scripts viewers connect to, it is characters. Even when the characters have nothing to say or do, how they portray that nothing still counts. Doctor Who was never the most logical of shows, it was emotional. Jodie Whittaker had scenes like this. David Tennant, the most popular modern doctor, had scenes like this.
Tell me the human race is degenerate now. I'm sorry. And you know what happens now. No! You wouldn't listen. No! Because you know what I'm going to say. No! I forgive you.
But they were also followed by moments like this.
Lying in your arms. Happy now.
We're the only two left. There's no one else.
The emotional moments let people ignore the absurd. The show was never logical enough to survive a purely cerebral perspective. Another excuse is that Chibnall's era has too many companions, so none of them get time to develop. Try series 4 with Donna, revolving door for companions, 100% ratings. The two finale episodes are a circus with Rose, Martha, Donna, their families, Mickey Smith's friend from an alternate universe, Sarah Jane Smith, Jack Harkness, characters from both their spin offs, Davros, an additional Metacrisis doctor. Everyone has their own story arc, gets time to develop, and gets time for a farewell. This is Russell T Davies waving off his last season in style. If there was a shortage of female role models, there still is. Because the 13th Doctor isn't one. They didn't even try to make her one. The 13th Doctor takes us back to that demeaning stereotype of intelligence as socially inept and morally dubious. Heroic core values like never cruel or cowardly, never give up, never give in are, well, given up. This is cruel and unusual punishment for those who love the original premise. Nobody is representing the Doctor. Female sex is portrayed through its worst stereotypes: inconsistent, insecure, condescending, superficially charming, but duplicitous and heartless. It is like an incel developed the character. An example of the utter emotional aimlessness of the 13th Doctor is Tasman. The romance is about as counterintuitive as the name. I think it was frustration with the lack of emotion in the characters overall that had fans fantasizing a romance. The writers hadn't written it. Mandeep Gill hadn't been asked to portray it for 3 entire seasons. Jodie heard of it. They put it on the show with Yaz expressing her feelings in the third last special and the doctor refusing sensitively in the second last special. After the show first publicized that it would be addressed, leading fans to believe that there would be a brief romance. Why? For Chibnall failed to redefine the role for a woman, and Jodie failed to portray it. Early interviews imply that both thought that the other knew what they were doing. My guess is that Jodie interpreted the series as a children's show rather than sci-fi, which might explain her costume and behavior. This is not about skill, but a lack of definition. None out of Chibnall, the other characters, production team, or Jodie herself have a solid concept of why she's there and what she's doing. The production wasn't pulling together. The styling of the 13th Doctor is very similar to her look in Trust Me and Broadchurch, which are also rather victimized characters. The overall hairstyle remains similar, as does the tendency for a plain neckline of similar depth. Chibnall, Jodie, and the costume designer are the same for Broadchurch and Doctor Who, and the overall look of the character is similar too. Jodie had the presence of mind to choose her costume to represent many things, but not what she was hired for, the Doctor. She doesn't project authority. A costume could have helped her. Her initial impact in Peter Capaldi's costume, as well as in Spyfall, is boosted by the costumes. The TARDIS set is a saturated blue and orange that handicaps the ability of the cast to look prominent. This further hinders the authority of the 13th Doctor, who also wears a lot of blue and has blonde hair. There are countless scenes where she talks to people and everyone is just standing. This is a failure of direction. The script writers do Jodie no favors. She can be funny and clever, but she has very few scenes like that. Instead, she gets long rambles. This scene is a good example. She walks in a circle while she gets about a minute of talking done. Tennant can probably memorize and rattle off a grocery list and make it sound fascinating. The more he talks, the more you want to listen. Here's another minute of standing still and talking. Peter Capaldi, oh, his speeches, oof. Peter Capaldi is amazing with long speeches. But such lines should not have been written for Jodie. The script writers also make the 13th Doctor come across as petty or mocking people or callous or approach serious subjects with inappropriate attitudes or ghastly stereotypes. She is so insecure she can't invite companions to travel with her anymore. But perhaps the worst sin of the scriptwriters is the abundant
Absolutely
instances
not.
My
of people
hotel!
not taking her
My
seriously
rules. I
or
don't need your
reacting as though
approval,
she's
Doctor.
absurd.
Find the wind!
She was struggling to sound
So
authoritative.
I suggest you
The
run.
last thing she needed was
Run,
supporting
Doctor!
characters being dismissive or critical.
Still feeling confident?
Everything else can be a mistake, but this one has to be written in. Not so they show nothing. But these are people who were paid to make the 13 Doctors shine. So why didn't they? Toxic cosmetic activism. I investigated much of this after getting bored with the show and noticing the polarized views in the fandom. The 13th Doctor came from moral high ground as a long overdue correction to a show that was about the white male gaze and a world that lacked female role models, had outgrown its daffiness and idiosyncrasy, and finally had energy, spark, relatability, and so on. There was a confrontational approach to fans who might have had adverse opinions. For example, I want to tell the fans to not be scared by my gender. This is in the announcement of Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor. It predates any possible sexist response. Strange assumption, because the other time traveling female characters were fan favorites. Missy,
Say something nice.
TARDIS as sexy,
Are all people like this?
Like what?
So much bigger on the inside.
River Song,
When you love the Doctor, it's like loving the stars themselves. You don't expect a sunset to admire you back.
The viewership figures for the first episode of the 13th Doctor also indicate that regardless of any apprehensions, almost the entire fandom gave her a shot. Conflict was provoked for cosmetic activism and a militant exhibition of ethics prevalent on social media among self proclaimed activists. It is a confrontational style and thrives on something to attack for momentum through countering it angrily. It is also cyberbullying when it gangs up on people with accusations. From this perspective, women's rights are everything, and women's representation is an overdue change. This is not about the show or if the change even makes sense. If a woman does something only men did previously, it's a win. You don't need to know further details. It is a lot of power wielded with no stakes or consequences. Peter Davison learned this the hard way when he mentioned the loss of a role model for boys. Peter Davison, as the Doctor, understood the role and what it represented to people. Twitter outrage doesn't care. He quit the platform after a toxic backlash. Neither the show nor Jodie apparently urged the fans to maintain civility. To some extent, a confrontational approach has utility in activism because anger has momentum. It forces privilege to do a double take, but it is also divisive and often toxic with no room for dialogue or even civil disagreement. Social media activism is rarely commercial. Also, social media handles have a subscribed audience that is largely in agreement with their views. A TV show with millions of viewers cannot adopt such a style and still hope to retain the entire viewership. The 13th Doctor's stature often grew at the cost of the show or fans, including fake controversies like Jodie demanding equal pay as Peter Capaldi in January 2018, only to say in September 2018 that she had never been offered less. Here's another example.
It's going to be shit. I'm officially done. Bye, Doctor Who. All right. Gutted you've sold out to the PC squad, and I'm female.
There are some
Mortal,
responses Jodie
time
Whittaker
traveling,
has
regenerating
comments by
alien, played
random
by a
handles
woman.
on Twitter
It just isn't realistic.
before a single episode of her seasons has aired.
Lots of folks who never cared about Doctor Who before are suddenly very concerned. Maybe we should announce that climate change is a woman. Fair point. Jamie Gillespie has added a lot of red angry faces. You've ruined it. You haven't even seen me do it yet. For each sexist bigot threatening not to watch, there'll be a young girl with a new hero they didn't have before. Hashtag good riddance. Hashtag Doctor 13. Sam, who is at, have a better name, Sam, on Twitter. I can't even say it. He said ruined. I hope we hang out sometime.
Pity that such a look or mood was never used for her character on the show. But she's also right. The people who rejected her hadn't seen her play the part. She hadn't proved herself either. It gave the publication a viral clip showcasing her as a confident feminist. But what did mocking fans for publicity achieve for the show? I want to contrast this with a clip from an appearance of David Tennant on a TV show in a very similar situation, with his doctor revealed in a brief clip, but no episode aired.
Can I ask a question? Of all Doctor Who's that there have been, everybody has a favourite.
Yeah.
Who did you think was the worst? I'm guessing Sylvester McCoy, but you may want to go somewhere else with it.
It's probably going to be me. That's the terrible truth.
Stop it! Oh, come on.
The difference between laughing with and laughing at. If nothing, a little humility doesn't squander goodwill. Much later, when speaking in support of Jodie, David Tennant would reveal that he too had got such comments.
Sure. They're like, who's the Weasley-looking guy? Who's this? I like the last guy. This is not going to work for me. This show is dead to me. I resign from the internet. Send.
At that point, fans no longer doubted him, nor did he have to win anyone. He had nothing to prove to anyone. And everybody can look back and laugh together. As her run came to an end, Jodie Whittaker worried that she might have ruined it for women. As Matt Stevens revealed, they were not sure the show would be renewed at all till shooting the last episode. So the very real possibility was that they could have ended it for everyone. Not something that still seemed to bother her. Such interactions are not the norm, but they were reinforced by publicity for Jodie Whittaker's casting by reporters who had no sci-fi coverage or domain knowledge to their name. Several didn't even watch the show but had published opinions about how welcome a change it was. If feminism is a change, then what came before it was bad, right? This magnified every tactless alienation of fans. Neil Gaiman's description of working on characters created by other people explains this beautifully.
You're in the sandbox and you're playing with the toys that somebody left for you, but you're not going to break the toys.
This was really all the fans needed to know. But the 13th Doctor had a different set of priorities and no interest in winning over skeptics. Again, this is an attitude that comes from activism, not entertainment. Entertainment is all about, hey, we made this wonderful show, please watch it. Activism is more like, this is the truth. If you can't handle it, fuck off. You cannot do that with a show if you want viewership. Things got toned down after the backlash resulted in poor viewership and ratings, but the damage was done. If Chibnall was responsible for poor scripting, much of the publicity disaster alienating fans was of Jodie's making. All this would still be forgotten as the swagger of a superb actor if the 13th Doctor had delivered a performance that took it home. She would have showed everyone how it is done when it is done right with the right woman for the job and retained most of the staggeringly high initial viewership and possibly attracted more. That didn't happen. Was the Doctor perfect? At no point. Not before, not now. The aversion to introspection ensures that no matter how much criticism mounts, it will be dismissed as malice and evil qualities of people that don't let them appreciate the evolution of the show. You know, this whole upgrade that Jodie got. It's a pity because I don't think the current situation of the show was the intended result for anyone.